Our story begins in a time of dust and silence. It's a story of a showdown between kings, prophets, and their gods, all taking place on a lonely mountain that overlooks the sea.
For 3 long years, the skies over Israel had been shut tight. The ground was cracked and barren, the crops had all failed, and the once flowing streams, well, they were just beds of stone. This was more than just a drought. It was a deep crisis, a famine that grew out of a spiritual battle dividing the entire kingdom.
And then, in that 3rd year of suffering, a word came to the prophet Elijah, who'd been in hiding this whole time. The command was simple, direct, and it set him on a path straight toward a final, dramatic reckoning on the mountain.
So Elijah set out to face King Ahab. Now Ahab ruled from Samaria, but his heart had been turned by his wife, Queen Jezebel, towards worshiping Baal, the Phoenician god of storms and fertility. The altars to the Lord had been torn down, and his prophets had been hunted.
When Ahab finally saw Elijah, he didn't exactly offer a warm greeting. It was an accusation. "Are you the one who troubles Israel?" But the prophet, he didn't even flinch. He just turned that charge right back on the king, saying no, it wasn't him. It was Ahab and his father's house who brought this trouble on everyone by abandoning the Lord's commandments to follow Baal.
To settle this once and for all, right there in front of the entire nation, Elijah laid down a challenge. He declared that all of Israel and all the prophets of the court should gather together on Mount Carmel. There, the question of who truly held power would finally be answered. First, 450 prophets of Baal were called up. These were the spiritual leaders of the new religion, approved by the king himself. And it came ready to answer the challenge. And they weren't alone. They were joined by 400 prophets of the goddess Asherah. These prophets were so favored they actually ate at the queen's own table, their lifestyle paid for by the kingdom.
Standing before this huge crowd, Elijah gave them a very clear choice. He demanded they stop wavering. But the people, they were caught between their fear of the king and the weight of their own doubts. So they said nothing, not a word.
The terms of the contest were laid out. Each side would prepare a bull for a sacrifice and place it on a wooden altar. But here was the catch. No one was allowed to light a fire. The true God, Elijah declared, would be the one who answered by sending fire down from heaven.
The prophets of Baal, since there were so many of them, they went first. They chose their bull, prepared it, and laid it carefully upon their altar. From morning all the way until noon, they cried out, "O Baal, hear us!" They leaped and danced in this frantic ritual all around the altar. But as the hours dragged on with no answer, they got more and more desperate. They shouted louder, and then, in this gruesome rite, they started cutting themselves with blades until blood was flowing everywhere.
As midday came and went, Elijah started to mock them. "You'll have to shout louder," he said. "He's a god, after all. Maybe he's deep in thought, or on a journey. Or maybe he's just asleep, and you need to wake him up."
But despite all their shouting, their dancing, and their blood, the sky just stayed empty. There was no voice, no answer, no sign that anyone was even listening.
And then, as the time for the evening sacrifice drew near, all the noise finally died down. Elijah called the people to come closer, to watch. It was his turn.
He didn't build a new altar. He started by repairing an old altar to the Lord that had been torn down. He took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes of Israel. He arranged the wood, placed the sacrifice, and then he did something absolutely unthinkable. In the middle of a drought, he had the people pour water all over it. Not just once, but 3 times, until the wood was completely soaked and the trench around it was full to the brim.
In the quiet that followed, with every eye in Israel on him, Elijah stepped forward. He didn't shout, he didn't dance, he just spoke. A calm, focused prayer, asking the Lord to show the people that he was God, and that he, Elijah, was his servant.
And in an instant, fire fell from heaven. It didn't just light the wood, it consumed everything. The bull, the water-soaked wood, the 12 stones of the altar, even the dust underneath it. All of it was gone. The fire was so hot, it turned all the water in the trench into steam.
And when the people saw it, their silence, their indecision, it just shattered. They fell flat on their faces, and a single cry rose up from the whole crowd, a declaration of faith that just echoed across the entire mountain.
With the people's choice now clear,
Elijah gave a command. He ordered them to seize the prophets of Baal. Not a single one was to get away. They were taken down from the mountain to the Kishon Valley, and there a grim judgment was carried out.
The contest was over. The great spiritual conflict was settled. But there was one thing left. Elijah went to King Ahab and told him, "Go eat and drink, because I hear the sound of a heavy rain."
While the king went on his way, Elijah climbed to the very top of the mountain. He bowed down to the ground and sent his servant to look out toward the Mediterranean Sea. 6 times his servant went, and 6 times he came back with the same report. The horizon was clear. There was nothing.
Elijah sent him a 7th time, and this time the servant came back with news. A tiny cloud was rising from the sea, no bigger than a man's hand. That was the sign he'd been waiting for.
And that tiny sign was all it took. Elijah sent word to Ahab to get his chariot ready and leave before the storm trapped him. And in just a short time, the sky grew black with clouds. The wind picked up, and then the heavens just opened. A torrential rain fell on the parched land, finally ending the long drought.
As the downpour began, his supernatural strength came over Elijah. He tucked his robe into his belt and just started to run. He ran through that storm with such speed that he actually outpaced the king's chariot, leading the way for more than 20 kilometers, all the way to the gates of the royal city of Jezreel, as the thirsty land drank in the life-giving rain.